The practice of illustrating news stories with photographs was made possible by printing and photography innovations. Printing presses could only publish from engravings or woodcuts until the 1880s. Early news photographs required that the image be reinterpreted by an engraver before they could be published. Photography itself was a result of combining several technical discoveries. Long before the first photographs were made, as early as the 4th century AD, the camera obscura was known to scholars and philosophers as a way to observe light. Camera obscura literally means dark chamber. It is an optical device that projects an image of its surroundings onto a screen. In the 13th century, the camera obscura was used for the safe observation of solar eclipses and the phases of the moon. In the 1500s, the camera obscura was a darkened room with a convex lens inserted into one wall. The outside scene passed through the lens and was projected onto the opposite wall, or viewing surface. Artists used this as a way to trace an outside scene and paint or draw it. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the camera obscura shrunk to the size of a portable box. The image was reflected onto ground glass. Artists were aided by the use of the camera obscura. In the 19th century, with improved lenses that could cast larger and sharper images, the camera obscura room became a combination of education and entertainment. It flourished at the seaside and in areas of scenic beauty. From the portable box came the development of the photographic camera and the ability to accept a sheet of light-sensitive material to capture an image or scene. We owe the name of photography to Sir John Herschel, an English mathematician, astronomer, and chemist who made numerous contributions to photography. The term was derived from the Greek words for light and writing. He was the first to use the term in 1839, the year the photographic process details became public. There are two distinct scientific processes that had to come together to make photography possible: optical and chemical. In the summer of 1827, Joseph Niepce, a French inventor, was credited with making the first successful photograph. He placed an engraving onto a metal plate coated in bitumen, a sticky tar-like form of petroleum, then exposed it to light. When he placed it into a solvent, gradually an image appeared. This photograph required 8 hours of light exposure to create and quickly faded away. 2 years later, Niepce partnered with Louis Daguerre, a French artist and chemist. Although Niepce died 4 years later, Daguerre continued experimenting with a way of developing photographic plates and reducing the exposure time. Daguerre is credited with inventing the first practical photographic process in 1839, called the daguerreotype. The image or subject was exposed onto a light-sensitive metal sheet, which created a direct positive image. The exposure time was reduced to half an hour. He also discovered that the image could be made permanent by immersing it in salt. The daguerreotype process was good. However, it was expensive and the image could not be duplicated. Although it became an instant craze, there was a growing need for a means of duplicating an image. At the same time, William Fox Talbot was developing a process called the calotype. For this process, the image or subject was exposed onto a light-sensitive paper, producing a paper negative. The earliest paper negative was produced in August 1835 by Talbot. Its quality was inferior to the striking images produced by the daguerreotype process. Talbot made significant improvements, and by 1844 he was able to create a photographically illustrated book entitled The Pencil of Nature. From the negative of the calotype, an unlimited amount of duplicates could be made. This is the greatest advantage of the calotype process. This is the basis of our modern photographic process. Though the paper negative allowed for duplication, the process still had imperfections, and so experimentations continued to improve the quality. In 1851, Frederick Scott Archer was credited with developing a process called the wet collodion process, or the wet plate process. Glass plates were used for the negative to capture the image when exposed to light. This process was much faster, reducing the exposure times to 2 or 3 seconds. As well, the cost was significantly less than previous processes. The glass plates were coated with collodion, a colorless syrupy solution of nitrocellulose in ether. These plates had to be exposed and developed immediately, while plates were still wet, which means darkrooms had to be portable. Glass plates did produce a much sharper image. It was clear that a dry method was necessary because of the inconvenience of the wet collodion process. Several attempts were made. However, it was Richard Maddox who made the first successful dry plate negative in 1871. Maddox developed a way of using gelatin instead of glass as a basis for the photographic plate. Gelatin is a colorless, water-soluble glutinous protein obtained from animal tissues. Gelatin is still the base of our film today. In the dry plate process, glass plates were coated with gelatin. However, photography at this point was still too complicated for ordinary users. George Eastman is remembered for making photography accessible to all. In 1884, George Eastman invented roll film, a photographic medium that replaced fragile glass plates with a photo emulsion coated on paper rolls. Emulsion is a light, sensitive coating on paper or film. He used gelatin as the base, adding a very thin celluloid back and coated it with emulsion. The invention of this flexible roll film greatly sped up the process of recording multiple images. Eastman then received a patent in 1888 for a camera designed to utilize the roll film. He coined the marketing phrase, "You press the button, we do the rest." The camera owner could send in the camera with a minimal processing fee. The company would process the film, reload the camera, and return it to the user. On September 4, 1888, Eastman founded the Eastman Kodak Company. He introduced and marketed many cameras under the company name of Kodak. In an effort to bring photography to the masses, Eastman introduced the Brownie in 1900 at a price of just $1. It became a great success. Although color photography was explored throughout the 19th century, it wasn't until 1861 that the first color photograph was taken by the Scottish physicist James Clerk Maxwell. However, it wasn't until the early years of the 20th century that a film with full sensitivity to color was achieved. Edwin Land is best known for patenting polarized light filters in 1934 and his invention of instant photography in 1948. He was an American inventor and physicist whose one-step process for developing and printing photographs created the next revolution in photography. The Polaroid Corporation was founded in 1937. The first Polaroid camera produced a black and white print in 60 seconds. It was sold to the public in November of 1948. In 1963, Polaroid introduced and marketed instant color photographs. Another significant name in photographic history is Edward Muybridge, who paved the way for motion picture photography. Muybridge was an English photographer who is best known for his work using multiple cameras to capture motion. As well, he developed the Zoopraxiscope, a device used to project a series of images in successive phases of movement. In 1872, the former governor of California, Leland Stanford, hired Muybridge to settle a popularly debated question of the day. Leland took the position that all 4 of the horse's hooves are off the ground at the same time during a gallop. Muybridge began experimenting. He used a series of large cameras placed in a line, each one being triggered by a thread as the horse passed. By 1877, he had settled the question. By 1878, after continued experimentations, Muybridge had successfully photographed a horse in fast motion. During the next several years, he studied people and animals in a similar fashion while the subjects were walking, boxing, and a variety of activities. By the 1880s, the development of the motion picture camera allowed individual images to be captured and stored on a single film reel. This led quickly to the invention of a motion picture projector to shine light through the film and magnify the moving pictures onto a screen for an audience.